Okay, good afternoon to all. And the topic of my presentation today will be writing research papers in science. This will be an introductory lecture, particularly for the beginners. And during this lecture, I am going to give you an outline about why do you publish and the process of review, or it's also called peer review, types of manuscripts, and impact factor and predatory journal, and the structure of an research article with all the details, title, abstract, keywords, introduction, materials and methods, result, and discussion, and different patterns of reference styles, an issue of a pointer towards plagiarism, and then what do you meant by quality of a research paper. So these are the components which I will cover in the next 1.5 hours. Okay. So let me start with a basic question of why did a researcher write a paper and publish? Okay, and the primary answer to this question is non-publication of data is a misconduct in research. That means if you are doing a research, and if you are doing research and with the public money and not publishing the research, result, and that is actually a misconduct in research. Okay, that is one reason. That is my answer, primary answer to this question. And then there are different reasons why people publish paper, and it may vary. For example, it may be to get credit. Okay, it may be to expose the discoveries by you. It may be to get recognition. Okay, and for a teacher, definitely it may be for getting a promotion. And reusability, for example, somebody can use the knowledge so that they can strengthen it or further the research based on your work. Okay, and contribution to nation building, definitely some of the research may ultimately contribute to nation building. And some people may get an inner peace or satisfaction when they publish a good paper. That is another reason. And some people always think about becoming immortal. If you have a standard publication, that will remain in science forever. And there are several reasons. And then you can also place yourself where you are and why do you want to publish a paper before you start writing a paper and publishing a paper. Okay, so the reasons may vary from person to person, but ultimately I will tell you, if you are doing research, either PhD or a postdoctoral program, and even a PG or MPhil program, if you are using public money and not publishing anything, and that is a misconduct in research. So try to publish the paper when you have a good research with you. Okay, so this is one thing to start with. And the general motto in science is, right from the earlier days, it is publish or perish. Because if you do research, your duty is to publish it or let the people know what you are doing. Okay, and and there are interesting cartoons in the cartoon stock. If you don't publish, and then you will perish. Okay, that whether there are different kind of arguments whether what will happen if you don't publish, but it's always better that you publish so that the sweat through your research will ultimately find its value in one day or other. Okay, and how to get published and how will you prepare your manuscript? Okay, and there are different terms associated with that also you should understand. Okay, and then we'll start defining certain terms. And first is manuscript. Okay, manuscript is a work that the author submits to a publisher, editor, or producer for publication. Okay, this is actually the first the work you actually submit for a publisher or to an editor, and that is called a manuscript. Okay, and that means it's a written paper pre-publication, and that is the manuscript. It is not a paper, it is only a document which you have already submitted to a particular journal. It is not actually published, and this is only the submission, and that is called the manuscript. Okay, and then what is an article? And an article is actually a written paper that has been published. Okay, and there are different other terms. For example, there is a term called preprint. Okay, what is a preprint? It's a version of a scholarly or scientific paper that precedes formal peer review and publication in a peer-reviewed scholarly or scientific journal. That means this is a version of a scientific paper that precedes formal peer review, or something before the review, after your submission, and that is called a preprint. Okay, so you have to understand the difference between three terminologies here. Manuscript is the document which you have submitted to a publisher or an editor. An article is something which is already published, a written paper that has been published. And then a preprint is a version of the scholarly scientific paper that precedes for formal peer review, or a manuscript after publishing, after submitting to a particular journal, then this is called a preprint. Okay. And then there is another terminology. See, if you look at the publishing workflow, and this is the workflow, and it will first start as you submit it as a manuscript, and then it will become a preprint. Okay, then it will become a postprint. Postprint is an article which has been peer reviewed in preparation for a publication in a journal. Okay, that means that it's an article which has been peer reviewed in preparation for publication in a journal. That is called postprint. Okay, and both the preprint and postprint may differ from the final published version of an article. Okay, and then preprints and postprints are together referred to as e-prints or e-prints. Okay, so this is the workflow. Once you submit a manuscript, and then that will the journal will receive it, then it is called a preprint. Okay, so this will undergo a process of review, and I will explain what exactly is a peer review. And then after the review process, it is called a postprint, and this is an accepted manuscript, and then that will be copy edited, typeset, and formatted, and then it will and the galley proof, or the proof, will be sent to the authors for verification, and after the verification, this will be published. Okay, and the published version may be in a PDF form, or it is HTML format, and often you will get a DOI number. Okay, digital object identifier number in many good journals. Okay, so these are the terminologies which you have to understand. And finally, some of the journals, they print it. Okay, and that print, you will get the copy of your article, or now it is called article because it's already published, an article printed, and then you have to pay for that, and this is called a reprint. That means the hard copies of the papers which is published and printed by the journal, and that is called the reprint. Okay, so reprinters are not now very common, because many of the journals have stopped printing the journal, and many of them are available online, and I am sure that in the coming years there will be only online versions of many of the journals. So these are the workflows. So before you start publishing, you should understand what are the type of what is the difference between the manuscript and an article, and the preprint and postprint. And the reprint is something which is printed, your paper in a journal which is printed. Normally this is given by the journal itself, and some journals continue to do that. They give the reprint, but against a cost. Okay, then the peer review process. What is actually a peer review process? And normally every journal will have a set of experts called reviewers in a particular field, and it was this term peer review was used in 1665 by the Royal Society of London, and it places the reviewer with the author at the heart of the scientific publishing. So this is the central or the essence of a good journal. The manuscript, once submitted, it will undergo the process of peer review. That means the subject editors, the reviewers who are experts in a particular field, they will read it critically and evaluate the paper for its merit or quality, and then they will send you the comments, and then which will provide the author the opportunity to improve the paper considerably. Okay, and normally majority of the journals, they resort to three reviewers. Okay, three reviewers in many cases. In some cases it is two reviewers. Anyway, it may be more than one reviewer in many cases. Okay, and why this process of peer review is required? This is only to improve the quality. For example, if I have 200 plus papers with me, and that is right from my first paper when I was an MPhil student, and if you go through the career as a researcher, you will see that this kind of a peer review process has helped me as a researcher in improving my language, improving my style of presentation in a paper, and also it has helped me in improving the content in the paper and the science in the paper. And this is the backbone of every publication. Okay. And then this process of review is very, very important. Peer review is actually a quality check for a journal. Okay. And then reviewers are the backbone of publication of research papers, because without good quality reviewers, the quality of the journal will also will not improve. Okay. So peer review system exists to validate the academic work, helps to improve the quality of the published research, and increases networking possibilities with the research communities. For example, some of the reviewers may even expose their name. They don't have any issue with mentioning their name. And sometimes even the author can communicate with the reviewer, and that will ultimately help in maintaining a connectivity so that you can always have a mentor in the form of a reviewer in some cases. So this is also possible. So all these possibilities are there for the review process. Okay, so let us discuss the criteria for review. And then one thing is that sometimes, if you submit a paper, this will be rejected without even review by the editorial team. And there are many reasons why it is rejected. And then the primary reason is that, you check with the journal format. And every journal has a style. It's called format. And if it is not in the format, this will be rejected. Okay, so every person who is a beginner should look at the journal website and check the recent issues, and that is also important. And then look at the style, and then read the guidelines given for the authors, and then you check. Okay, and then you match. And if everything is in perfect match, then your first stage is over. Okay, and then second, you yourself decide whether the paper you submitted to this particular journal, it has some original material in it, some originality in it, some innovation in it, there is some importance for the study. And if you are confident, and that is again second point. Okay, then the third component is actually the organization. All these things the reviewer look and analyze critically. Organization, whether the entire manuscript is provided with the subheadings, and it is organized in a scientific manner, and there is continuity in organizing the text, etc., etc. Okay, so organization, readability, and English language. And English language, even though you are writing science, this is very, very important. And it doesn't mean that you should be an English professor to write a scientific paper. No, but there should be basic English grammar. And that is very, very important, because many of the leading publishers also give you a provision to submit it to an English editor in their own service. But it is very, very expensive. Very, very expensive, especially for an Indian scholar. It is very expensive. So it's actually a mandate that you should actually correct the language. Now we have the software like Grammarly, which actually helps you in correcting the language as well. Okay. So I have also seen some of the manuscripts submitted to our journal, even without a spell check. You should not do that. And many of the journals, many of the international journals, they immediately reject it, because there is a possibility for correcting the grammar even with a software which you use like Word. That itself offers so many possibilities of checking the spellings, checking the grammar, etc. Okay, when you use the English language, you just check the author guidelines. What is actually the preference of the journal, whether they follow the British style or the American style. So you have to fit in the whole thing. And what is required is actually consistency. For example, in some places you follow the British style, in some places you follow the American English, and that is not good. Consistency, you use something consistently. If you are following the British style, and then you have to do that. And check the guidelines for the authors of that particular journal. And if they demand that this should be British English, then you have to submit it accordingly. Okay. Then study design, methods, analysis, and findings. This is the next thing which the reviewer will go through. Okay. And then study conclusions, limitations, and future directions of research. Okay, whether you have finally stated a good conclusion, and then you have, if there is some limitations for the study, whether you have actually mentioned that, and if there is a future scope for research, further research, whether you have mentioned that. And all these things are important in the structure of a journal. Okay, and then fourth component, which I failed to mention earlier, is the literature review, whether you have mentioned the recent literature in this particular field. All these are important. That means when you peer review process, or a reviewer who is actually handling this process, they will examine all these things. All these things are actually evaluated critically. So before you submit a paper for review or for a journal for publication, you understand that there is a process called peer review, and peer review is the backbone of the quality of a journal. And all the journals, especially the high quality journals, they always have a stock of high quality reviewers. Okay, they will go through that critically. That means if you are not getting a good quality review, that's an indication that the journal is not performing well. Okay, that's also an indication. And let us see how this peer review process work. And for example, there are different terminologies connected with that. And one is called a single blind review. Here, in the case of single blind review, the reviewers are aware of the author's identity. That means the publisher will send the paper to the reviewer with the author's name. Okay. And however, the authors are not aware of the reviewers and their research of the research manuscript. And what is the problem? Some problems are there for single blind review. Knowing the author's identity can influence the review, while this method also serves to reduce chances of bias and the conflict of interest. So that is single blind review. The reviewer will know who is the author, but the author will not know who is the reviewer. This is a single blind review, and some other journals follow this kind of a single blind review. And majority of the journals, they follow double blind review. That means they will send the manuscript to a reviewer without the author name. Author will not know who is the reviewer. So this is this kind of a review is blind at both the ends. Okay, so this will enhance transparency and also the quality, because there will not be any bias. Okay, some other journals even remove the acknowledgements which mention the places or the persons, and in order to effectively ensure the double blind review. So remember, there is a double blind and single blind review process, and most of the journals follow a double blind review. That means the author will not know who is the reviewer will not know who is the author. So it ensures transparency and also avoid all the kind of bias. Now, open is basically followed by some journals, some good journals also. For example, the reviewer will know the author will also know the reviewer. So these three kinds of reviews are there, and these kind of review process all these kinds of review process are there in journals. Okay, it basically depends upon the the policy of a journal, what kind of a review process they prefer to or resort to. Okay. And if I just give you a process, the whole process of the peer review, and when you submit a manuscript, okay, and you write a manuscript, and you are not writing an article, remember, you produce a manuscript, and then you submit a manuscript, and then initial review is done by the editor. And if the editor or editorial team feels that this paper is not in the purview of the journal, or it doesn't follow the quality standards maintained by the journal, they will immediately reject it. That means the second stage will not, the manuscript will not go to the second stage. Okay. And then, so if it is not based on the decision of the editor, if it does not fit into that journal, or does not meet the quality standards, the editor will reject it. Okay. Then if the manuscript is accepted, then it will go to the editorial platform, and then the editors will select the subject experts who are the reviewers, and they are called the peer reviewers. Okay. And this will be sent. Most of the journals will send this paper to 3 reviewers. Okay. Most of the quality journals, and then this process will be in the peer review stage. And majority of the journals now, where the online submission system is there, you can also track the status of your manuscript. When you go to the the website of the journal, and you log into your author platform and check, and then you will see the status. So if it is mentioned that this is in review, it is the meaning is that this is with the reviewer. Okay. And then the reviewers and most of the journals give a sufficient time. It may be 1 month in majority of the cases, and getting a review back is not easy. Remember, all the reviewers are doing an voluntary service. That means none of the journals actually pay the reviewer. That means if I am getting a paper for review, and sometimes it take more time than writing a paper in some cases. Okay, that means the reviewers are doing an voluntary service. That also you have to understand. Sometimes they may take some time because they may be busy with many other things. And all the good quality journals, they send it to a specific reviewers who are experts in the field. But remember, in some subjects which are with the number of viewers globally is very, very less. For example, if you are working with the taxonomy, okay, and in a particular taxon, where the number of global expert itself is very, very less. So that means a particular reviewer in that field will receive large number of papers in different journals. So that means it may take some time. And then once the review process is completed, the reviewer will send with their comments, send the manuscript back to the editor. So once the editor receive all the three reviews from the reviewers, and the process of review is completed. Okay, so what will the reviewers say? There are three options. One option is that if there are some issues with regard to the science of that, or the style of that, or duplication of work, or there is nothing new in your study, sometimes or majority of the reviewers recommend rejection of the paper. Okay, and then some reviewers, if they do not find any major mistakes, then they will ask the editor to accept the paper. Sometimes it may be with minor corrections, and in most of the cases, the manuscript may require a revision, and revision may be major revision or minor revision. Okay, and if there are revision, the editor will write to you with the copies of the comments. Now there is an option for track editing, and you will get a manuscript with the track editing and specific comments by the editors. By the reviewers. Sometimes even the editors may comment on the paper, and if he is an expert on that. And then what you have to do, this will be sent to the authors. And normally, remember, it will be sent only to the corresponding author. I will come to that later, who is the corresponding author. And then once the review, you send back the corrected version with this explanation. What you have to do, you have to give explanation for all the questions asked by the reviewer. That means for a reviewer, there may be 3 reviewers. Then you have to write in a sheet, reply to the reviewer's comment or editor's comment one by one. Reviewer 1, what is your answer to the question asked by the reviewer 1? Question number 1, question number 2, or explanation to a matter. So all these explanations and answers you have to give, and then this manuscript. Then after your submission, majority of the editors, they sent back the review to the reviewer itself. Okay, and then the reviewer is happy with your revision, and if you have answered all the questions correctly and you have given explanations, and then the manuscript will be accepted. And if the reviewer finds that again your explanation is not satisfactory, it is not up to the quality of the journal, then the manuscript will be rejected. Okay, and once the manuscript is accepted, then you will be informed that this will be accepted, and the next stage is this will go to the layout team or design desk, and they will design it according to the format of the journal, and then they will send you the proof, and then the paper will be published. Okay, and this is the stage. And now the modern trend is that they will publish it online first before a layout, and it will be there for a few weeks or 1 month, and then the design team will actually lay out or design the manuscript, and then the manuscript will be published. And once the manuscript is published, this is called an article. Okay, so this is the whole process of review. So remember, and when you submit a manuscript, this undergoes all these processes. Okay. So this is a very interesting chart given by PLOS Journal, and what is actually the workflow in a PLOS journal. And all PLOS journals now offer authors the option to publish their peer review history alongside their accepted manuscript. So this is a new provision given by the PLOS journal. They will actually give you the whole history of your paper along with the the manuscript, accepted manuscript. Okay, so the uh, so this is a stage. Manuscript is submitted, and then initial journal check is over, and then you can see the authors opted to be the to post a preprint. That means they have allowed to post a preprint, and then the reviewers decide whether to sign their review. What is the time? So this has undergone the peer review process, and the final journal checks for production after review, and then finally the article is published. And then the author can opt whether they have to publish the review history. That means the entire this is a process. This is a new addition to whole publishing. That means the entire history of publishing the paper can come along with the paper. When did you submit, and what was the time of the review, and when did you submit the revision, and when it is published. All this history will be there in the paper, and this is a new version of publication and or new option given by the PLOS journal. But only when the author says that you agree with this process, they will do that. Okay, this is a new addition to the whole publication process. Now, this is an interesting statistics. You look at some of the world's topmost journals like Cell, Nature, Science, and what is the percentage of rejection in these journals? At Cell, Nature, and Science, out of every 100 submissions received, merely 3 make it through the editor's review and then peer review. In other words, the rejection rates in these journals are as high as 97%. That means out of the 100 manuscripts submitted, normally 3 will be published, and that means you can imagine the rate of rejection. That means only that quality papers are accepted, and that is the reason why they maintain a good quality standard, good quality and standard, and also high impact. Okay, even at journals where screening is comparatively relaxed, acceptance rates rarely exceed 40%. Okay, that means even in the moderate journals, the acceptance rate is maybe around 40%. That means the review process is very, very strong in all the good journals. That you have to remember. Okay, that means once you submit in a good journal and it is rejected, don't worry. This is actually a starting point. If you are a beginner, then based on the comments you receive, you can still improve and submit it to the next journal. So if you have a quality set of reviews with you, then definitely you can improve. And that is how you have to learn in the process of publishing, in the process of submitting manuscripts. Okay. And I am the editor of the Journal of Aquatic Biology and Fisheries, and even this is an university journal, remember. And then I can tell you 20 to 25%, sometimes it is up to 30% papers are rejected. And what is the reason for my or the editorial team's rejection? And the primary reasons are unsolicited papers. Okay, that means it is not in the format. It is not following any kind of quality checks and standards. This is one reason. Okay, and then poor quality. That means even the content is very poor, and without a proper hypothesis, without a proper research design, etc. And then sometimes the journal's format is not taken care of. They will just write something in a general format. And another reason which I see quite often is plagiarism. Plagiarism is actually copying there are 2 different kinds of plagiarism, and one kind of plagiarism is, as you are aware, it is copy and pasting from some other journals, and sometimes you may copy an idea but never give credit to that journal. Sometimes you may copy an idea but miss the reference there, and you give another reference there. All these things are, and secondary reasons, and no after review, no new contribution to science. If it is something which is already said by somebody and your manuscript has nothing new, and that will be rejected. Okay, and second issue is wrong methodology. You are using a totally wrong methodology, and that is another reason for rejection. And then all the science should actually go through some kind of statistical analysis. Analysis is very, very important, and you have to follow the correct method of statistical analysis. And if it is not done properly, that will be rejected. If your sample size is very less, for a statistical analysis, or you applied a wrong kind of statistical tool there. And okay, then these are the reasons. Sometimes the paper will come without any kind of statistical analysis. So in science, you can prove this only through analysis, and that means analytical data is very, very important. And then variation between hypothesis, results, and conclusion. This is another reason for rejection. That means you will not you may have a hypothesis, but your result will tell something, and your conclusions may be entirely different thing. So all these things are important when you prepare a manuscript. Okay. Then for a beginner, you are planning to write an article, you are planning to write a manuscript. First thing is, you are the judge, nobody else. Okay. And then you have to check some of the things. And one is that, whether you check whether you are ready to publish. And what are the things you have to check? One is that, whether you have the correct conclusions. And if you have a significant enhancement of the published work. Okay, that means you are confident that your paper has something new to tell to the audience, or to the readers, or to the community. And then that some contribution to enrichment of knowledge is there, some novel findings are there, fine. And then your review is up to date of a subject or a field, and you have some original result with you, and your methodology is correct. And if you are confident that all the things are correct, then this paper is ready. That is what the Elsevier says. Okay, so that means you are the judge. And if you are quite confident that your paper has all these things to publish, and go ahead. Okay, but remember that you may be in a haste to publish, but no simultaneous submission in different journals. That is an unethical practice. That is a kind of unethical practice in research. So that means should not be all the journals insist that you should not publish, you should not submit the manuscript simultaneously in two journals. And if it is a good quality journal, sometimes your paper, both the papers may be received by the same reviewer. And in that case, from both the journals, your paper will be rejected. And sometimes you may also will be blacklisted. Okay, so that means you are the judge. And whether this is the right time, your paper is ready, you have to decide that. Simultaneous publication in two submission in two journals is unethical practice. Okay, and even publication of the same matter in two journal, or even in a presentation of the same matter in two seminars, again it is an unethical practice. So you should not do that. Okay. Now you are confident. You are confident when you plan for an article. You are confident that you have something new to tell, and there is some good quality work with you. And then go ahead. Okay. Then what makes a stronger article? One, clear and useful message to convey. You have some message to convey. There is something in your paper which actually makes it worth novel. Okay. And send presentation of facts in a logical manner. So you are putting every thing in a logical manner. That is the second thing. And then readers grasp the research. Readers understand what exactly is your research. And then you can go ahead. All these things are quality checks, and all depends upon how much time you spend for research. If you are spending good time for doing a work, and then you will get good result. And if your methodology is correct and you are following the correct research methodology, then you can go ahead and you will get sufficient data. And then if you go with the good analysis, then you will get the good results and for preparation of a paper. So all these things depends upon how you work, how you see research. Okay. Then let us discuss, before we go into how to prepare a paper, there are different kinds of manuscripts. Okay, and majority of the journals, the research paper published is based on original research, and these are called the original research paper. Okay, this is all known by in different journals. They are known by different names like original article, research article, full article, etc., etc. So that means the first kind of research paper is actually the original research paper. Okay, that means this is based on your original work. That is one thing. And there will be short reports, letters, note, or short communications. And if you have nothing to write in the form of a long paper, for example, if you have a short observation, a small observation, or a small, a species finding somewhere or there, And then what you can do, you can write it as a short communication. It may not have the full strength of an article, a full article. It may be a small communication with the 2 or 3 pages. And then that is known as a note or short report or even a letter. Okay. And these are all short communications and sometimes commentary. Commentary means short articles, usually around 1,000 to 1,500 words, which will draw attention to or present a criticism of a previously published article, book, or a report. Okay, the commentary you can write if you are an expert. For example, some of the articles already published in a journal, and if you disagree totally with the science or content in that, and then you can write a commentary with all the explanations that what is wrong with an article. So the commentary will be published. And the author can also publish a rebuttal, which explain that whether the commentary is right or not. So commentaries often appear in research journals, and research journals often promote the commentaries, because if something goes wrong with an article published in a journal, and the other scientists have an option to write a commentary on that. So that is a commentary. Okay. So majority of them will be original research, and then there will be short reports, letters, or short communications, which are small, which are based on a shorter observation or a small comment on in a particular phenomena or a particular species. Okay. Then another thing is review article. You may feel that review article is something very light. No, not so. And for example, if you are a beginner, for example, and I will not actually recommend you to write a review article. Review articles are often written by the experts in the field, and the review article provide a critical and constructive analysis of the existing published literature in the field. So that is why I always tell you that if you are a beginner, don't begin with a review article. Review is actually once you know the entire subject, and then you know the content, you know the research gap in that area, and then you can write a review article. So it involves all the things. For example, the critical analysis of the paper so far published in that field. Okay, and then you have to analyze that, and then you have to compare that, and then you have to actually expose the research gap areas, and then you have to finally suggest the recommendations for future research. So normally review articles, good quality review articles are written by experts in a particular field. But once you start publishing it, once you gather a lot of information and start writing, then you can come back and write a review article. So never attempt a review article when you are a beginner in this field. Okay. And most of the journals, they usually accept or invite experts to write a review article for their journal. That is all. That may also happen if you are an expert in the field. Then opinion article. So if you have an opinion about a particular phenomena or a particular analysis or methods used in a particular study, you can always write an opinion. What is your opinion about this method? What is an opinion about a recent incident or a recent phenomena which happened? All these things you can, or you can even highlight the weakness of a hypothesis. All the things you can write as an opinion paper. Okay, we have written a few opinion papers on the invasive alien species. That is our opinion about what is happening with this kind of a phenomena. Okay, and another kind of research article is a book review. Okay, book review means if it's a new book is published in this field, you buy the book, write critically, and there is a style. There is a style for book review for each and every journal, and follow that style, and then you can write a book review. Okay, this is not just what is there in the book, but it should be a critical analysis of the merits and demerits of that book. So these are the kinds of manuscripts which you can prepare. Okay, right from a research article up to a book review. Book review, there's no age. If you are a good reader and if you are a critic on a particular subject, it's very easy to write a book review. Okay. Now, how will you select the right journal? And first, you understand what is the field of your research, and then search for all the good journals in Scopus or Web of Science, which are the best journals available in that. And then you look at the quality of your manuscript and then decide on the journal. So what is the your quality of your manuscript, and then based on that, based on the subject, then you decide the article or choose the journal which you wanted to publish. Okay, and I always recommend the youngsters. You always select a journal which is in with an index which is indexed in Scopus, so that it is actually a quality check. Even though it may not have an impact factor, you always go with a good quality journal, because it is if it is Scopus indexed, then it is an indication that it passes few screenings for maintaining the quality. Then uh, never go with an intuition. I will come to the issue of predatory journals later. Okay, so you just look at the journal, read the journal aim and objectives, and what are the subject they actually accept. All the things are important. If the journal is not in a position to accept your research area, then it is better not to submit it. They will not actually compromise on that. Okay, so you choose only one journal, and simultaneous submissions are prohibited. And you can ask the supervisors or colleagues, they will give you suggestions if you are a beginner. And then you shortlist. You make a list of few journals where which suit actually your requirement and your quality of manuscript. Okay, and then you go through the aim, scope, then accepted articles, and what are the kind of articles. Now, this is very, very important. You go to the recent issues and then check the quality of the published journals, and then you check with the quality of your manuscript. Then you decide whether to go with this journal or not. And some of the journals and the readership and the current hot topics, all the things you have to. Sometimes, even though the journal mentioned that this particular area is acceptable to us, so they will not actually publish the basic research. Sometimes many of the journals go for the advanced type of work. So you have to check. You read the recent issues and then finally confirm. Okay. And for the youngsters, I always advise you, if you are a beginner, and then you choose a good quality journal based on the Scopus search, and then look at the impact factor, and then look at the quality. And if you are a university student in India or a college student in India, you have to publish a paper, publish in a journal which is now in the UGC care list. You always check with the UGC care list. Remember, almost all these Scopus index journal and all the journals in the Web of Science, they are accepted by UGC. They are in the UGC care list. Okay, and then check whether it is a predatory journal. All the things you have to. These are the quality checks when you select a particular journal. Okay, then look at the impact factor. Okay, then when you look at the impact factor, you always look at the I will come to that later. And if you look at the impact factor, the impact factor of a journal is decided by uh, a simple formula, and there is only one agency to do that. And now, earlier it was known as Thomson Reuters. Now it is known as Clarivate Analytics. Okay, and for example, if the Nature has an impact factor of 41.577 in 2017, it means that this is the formula to find out the impact factor for that particular year, 2017. And what is that formula? They take citations of the papers in the 2 preceding years. For example, it is 2017. They take the citations of 2016 and add to that the citations of 15, and divide that by total number of papers published. That means all the kind of papers, including original article, letter, short communication, everything, and then publications, total number of publications in 2015. So divide that. So all the citations in preceding 2 years, and total number of publications or the papers published in the preceding 2 years, and you will get a value, and then that is the impact factor. So this is how the journals determine the impact factor. Okay, so this is a very simple formula, and there is an agency, and this is something which you have to remember very carefully. There is only one agency authorized to give impact factor. If any journal claim that they have an impact factor of 5 or 6, and then you don't actually go with that. Many of the predatory journals say that they have an impact factor of 5 up to 10. Okay, and then that is not the thing. Impact factor, the only authority to give the impact factor is Clarivate Analytics, and they have a list of master journal list, and every year. So impact factor may vary every year. Okay, there is no permanent impact factor. It depends on the year, based on the citations in different years. And then you check the Clarivate Analytics and their journal citation report every year, and that will give you the impact factor. So that is the only authentic record. And don't say that I have seen it in the website and there is an impact factor. It is not true. It is only the Clarivate analytics which will provide you with the correct impact factor of all the journals in the world. All the journals in the world. Okay. And then you also see that they must be indexed in Web of Science to have an impact factor. Okay, and there are multiple things that I am not going into the details of that, but this is the only point you have to remember. If you any journal proclaims that they have such and such impact factor, you always cross check with the Clarivate Analytics, the journal list and impact factor list every year. Okay, that's the first thing to remember. And then coming to UGC care list. So this is from 2019 onwards. When you apply for a post, when you submit a PhD thesis or an PhD thesis, and you are only the journals approved by in the UGC care list will be considered. Okay, and this is remember this date 14/6/2019 onwards. That means any student working in any university in India or any college in India, when they submit the paper should be indexed in UGC care list. Then how will you identify that? Just two things to remember. And one is they have two sets of two groups of journals. You go to the UGC website, but only thing is UGC care website, ugccare.unipune.ac.in, because this is maintained by the University of Pune. And then they have two sets of lists. And one is UGC care list group 1, and second is UGC care list group 2. What is group 1? Journals found qualified through UGC care protocols. What is list 2? Journals indexed in globally recognized databases like Web of Science and Scopus. So there are two groups. So one is the second. Group 2 is very simple. Okay, all the journals, let us discuss group 1. Group 1, for example, our Journal of Aquatic Biology and Fisheries is in group 1. Okay, that means, the journals which are not in Scopus and the Web of Science, but they qualify the quality checks maintained or, maintained by or referred to by the UGC. And then the UGC expert committee or the selection committee will select the journals and put them in this. And you can see different subjects are there, and they mention the name of the journal. So if any journal, if you are not finding them in Web of Science or Scopus, you check the UGC care list and verify that. Okay, and based on the complaints received by the UGC, they may sometimes remove it. Okay, and if you say that if you complain that it was there earlier in this no way, you have to check periodically before you. That means I recommend the university research scholars in India to check the UGC care list if it is not a Scopus indexed journal, and some of the Scopus indexed journals are also now removed from the UGC care list. They have published a separate list. The journals which they have removed already from the Scopus list. That also you have to see, check whether the journal is listed there, and then submit the manuscript. Okay, so don't wait for the other things to come in. And the group 2 is very simple. All the Web of Science, all the journals in Web of Science is accepted by UGC. That means they should not list it, but all the journals in Web of Science is there. Then Scopus, few journals they have already removed based on the complaints that they are predatory, but you can check what are the journals removed by the UGC care list, care team, and then you submit. So these are the things which you have to remember when you are a university student. Okay. Then before I go into the methodology of preparing a research paper, you also have to remember what is a predatory journal. Okay, predatory journals, if you go by the Wikipedia definition, it is also called the right-only publishing or deceptive publishing. It's an exploitative academic publishing business model that involves charging publication fee to the authors without checking the articles for quality and legitimacy, without providing the other editorial and publishing services that a good journal will provide. So that's a thing. That means they always charge publication fee, and some of the good journals also charge publications fee, but it's different. Okay, that means if any journal, immediately after your manuscript submission asks for money, and that is an indication that that's a predatory journal. Normally, other journals, high quality journals, they have a page charge. Then when you search the journal, you also find out whether the journal has a page charge. Many good journals have a page charge now. Okay, and then They demand for a publication fee only when the paper is accepted of and peer reviewed and accepted. Okay, and then there is some of the journals will tell you. I can show you some of the journals. They will tell you that once you submit the journal, in the next week I will publish. That is the first indication that it is a predatory journal. Okay, and then some of the journals will accept any subject. For example, you submit in physics, chemistry, agriculture, fisheries, whatever it be, they will publish. And none of the high quality journals will do that. They're all subject specific, except some very good interdisciplinary journals. They too have their own standards. So that is another indication. Okay, then there is no good review. Whatever you give, it will be published with the minor corrections. If you get it in 2 days time, the review, that is also an indication that that has not gone through the peer review process. All these things are the indication of a predatory journal. Okay, and the predatory journals are all now slowly removed from the UGC care list also. Okay, and their business, that's a business model. The only intention of this predatory journal is to make money from the publisher. And if how will you identify that? There are interesting stories which you can read later. Okay, and this is a person called Jeffrey Beal. You have to read his story. Very, very interesting story. And then he was actually working with a library, and then he found out that there is a group of journals called predatory journals making money and then killing science. And then he initially brought out a list of predatory journals in the world. Okay, so this is called Bill Beal's list, and this is the the website to find out that. And there is also, if you have any doubt, there is a website called predatoryjournals.com /journals. Then search there, and you will get all the list of predatory journals in that. So try to avoid that, because they never maintain any kind of quality, and UGC will not recognize them. And even if they recognize now, in due course of time, that will be rejected. So all these things you have to remember. So you make sure that your the journal you selected is not predatory, or it is so just meant for a set of journals, just meant for milling money. And then see, you check the journal. There are different quality checks. I'm not going into the details. If you go to these websites of Beal, and there are large number of websites available, and thinkchecksubmit.org is one place where you will get all these kind of details. How will you identify? India is actually a hub for these kind of predatory journals. And also, if you go to their website, you will see that thousands of journals are listed, and all with the name World Journal of something, or International Journal of something, and all this nuisance and all this. And look at the the editorial list. You look at the advisors, and you search their names, and sometimes they may be non-existent. And all the things is the indication of a predatory journal. So avoid them. I'm showing some of the predatory journals here. Sometimes you may have published them in them, and then all these things are from the list of predatory journals. So they just publish, and you can also see there is a global impact factor here. It is wrong, because there's only one agency, I told you. For example, this journal called International Journal of Plant, Animal, and Environmental Science, everything together. You can publish in plant, animal, environment, whatever it be, they will publish. Okay, and then they have given an impact factor like 1.6. Totally wrong. You check with the Clarivate Analytics and then find out. Okay, so these are the things which you have to keep in mind when you find out a predatory journals. Quite a large number of journals are there with the different names. Okay, like European Journal of, they have wonderful names, International Journal of Advanced Research in Biological Sciences, so many things like that. I'm not the Asian Journal of Pharmacy and Life Sciences, very, very strange names. So all these things you can see in the list. So you try to avoid that. All these things are predatory, and then even some of the NASA indexed journals are predatory, basically because the way in which they publish, they have their own, for example, they have their own impact factor. For example, if you look at this journal, you can see that GAF impact factor. There is nothing called a GAF impact factor. And on the bracket, you see ICV Poland. Okay, impact value 5.6. All these things are wrong, primarily because there is nothing like that. Okay, there is nothing like that. Okay, so these are the indications of predatory journals. Try to avoid that. Okay. Now I am coming to the next part of my presentation on how to do. with the selection of a journal before submission. So before submission, you fix the journal, you finally decide what journal you wanted to submit, then visit the journal website, check online submission system, read the conditions, including the information to the authors, and including the page charges. You check page charges. If there are page charges, better. If you don't have money, don't go for that. Okay. And then read the guidelines for authors carefully, including the font size, including the spacing they require, and the language, everything. Okay. Then convert your manuscript perfectly in tune with the style required for the journal, including the fonts, line spacing, arrangement of tables and figures, word limits. Sometimes some of the journals specifically prescribe the word limits, including for abstract and keywords, limitations, everything will be there. And some journal offer even templates. Then you have to put it in the template. And these are the things you have to initially do before submitting the paper to a journal. Okay. And the journal, for example, if you go to every journal has their own, the style and details given, and look at the subject areas, and then find out whether your manuscript fit in into the journal. And then also before submission, you just many of them have the online submission system. Before you submit, you just get familiarized with the system by you have to create an account in every journal. Okay, and then enter into that and get familiarized with the system, what they demand, and then things like that. Then you submit. Okay, so this is the way the things looks in a online submission system. You have to start giving the title, and then the author's name. You have to put the author's name one by one. Then you can add the subsequent authors. Then you have to give the address and their area of expertise, etc. And this is how. And then you go to the next step of submission. So there is actually, you can see, start, upload submission, enter metadata, confirmation, and finally you can view a PDF file of your submission. And then once you approve that submission, after going through the PDF file, you can submit. So this is actually the way the different steps in the submission process. Okay, that is the next step after only you completing this thing, a manuscript. Okay, this is the structure of a research article, and there will be the title, author, abstract, and keywords. Then the introduction. Then there will be methods, and there will be results. There will be discussion and conclusion, and there will be references. So this is these are the things which is required. In short, what is there? Title, then introduction. Introduction, basically you ask the question why. I'll come to that detail. This is a small outline about a brief outline about the content of the paper, and then methods. How did you do the work? Results. What was your finding? And discussion. So what? If that is your result, so what? That's the question you have to ask. Then the references. So this is a brief outline about the content of the paper, and in short, these are the things. First, there will be title, then there will be authors, and then there will be abstract, and then there will be keywords, and then the text of the paper appears like this. There will be introduction, there will be methods, there is result and discussion, and there will be conclusions. And all these things are together called, the text is called the IMRAD. IMRAD format is the universal format. Maybe you are working with science, you may be working with social sciences, you may be working with any area in science. The format is universal, it is IMRAD. IMRAD is introduction, materials, methods, results, and discussion. So that's a format for all the journals, all the papers in any branch of science. Okay, and finally there will be conclusion, then there will be acknowledgements, there will be references. And some other journals now also has the facility or offer the facility to submit the additional materials, and these are called the supporting materials, supporting data. And it's not there in all journals, but now majority of the Springer and Elsevier journal promote these things. For example, if you have a huge database for analysis, if you are doing water quality analysis in an Excel sheet, and this is for 1 year or 2 year or 10 years, it's a huge data, but the data can be used or verified by different readers, scientists. Then you can put everything in as a supplementary material. Okay, so that means if you have many material to read, and then it can be provided as a supplementary material. And some other journals even promote putting the videos. If it is connected with the research paper, they also promote putting the videos. So they provide a link, and then you can also go to the video from your paper. This is all these things are possible in the online submission system now. Okay, so this is a structure of a research article. Okay, your dissertation may be different from the structure. There is only one difference, few differences you will see in the case of a thesis or dissertation. And the basic difference is that there will be a title page which indicate title, candidate, statement of purpose. For example, this is there in almost all the journals anywhere in the world. That means this is submitted. This thesis or dissertation is submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirement for the degree of philosophy, master philosophy or doctor philosophy, etc. And then there'll be register number if in some cases in some universities, and year of submission. So that's the title page for a thesis. I'm mentioning about the thesis, not about the paper. And then the difference between a research paper and the thesis is that there will be always declaration, certificate, acknowledgement, and contents. Okay, and these are there in a thesis. And declaration is actually your own declaration that the work is original. That's actually the declaration by the researcher. And certificate is it's a counter, the certification by the research supervisor or the so-called research guide that the work done by so and so is an authentic work. And then acknowledgement and content. And in majority of the cases, there will be list of tables, list of figures, and the list of abbreviations, etc., given towards the initial pages, okay, of the thesis. And then remember, the paper and the thesis, everything goes in the same style, IMRAD. Sometimes a thesis may have different chapters, but the style is same, IMRAD, introduction, materials and method, result and discussion and conclusions. Okay, and summary. Okay, and the summary is different from an abstract. Summary may be elongated than an abstract. Abstract may have a word limit. Summary in a thesis may be several pages. Okay, then references and then appendix. For example, if you have a research papers published based on your PhD thesis, all these things will form the appendix. Okay, and questionnaire, data format, all the things you can put as an appendix to your thesis. So this is how a thesis slightly differ from a research paper, but basically the content and the style will be the same. Okay. Now I'll start with the title. What is important with the title? Title is basically a condensed summary of your work. A condensed summary of your work. Okay, and then it should contain keywords of your research, and it should contain the keywords of your research. So it's actually a summary of your work. That means if somebody reads this title, they should understand everything in that paper. That you have to keep in mind. Okay, and then the keywords in that paper should be reflected in the title, so that in search engines everything in the inside the paper will be it can be easily searched. Okay, and then what you can do when you finalize a paper, sorry, a manuscript, is that you try with the different titles and ultimately decide that what is best fit. Okay, but it is not possible in a PhD thesis because you have a fixed title. Okay, and very difficult to remove it, change it unless and until you get an order from the university. Okay, so one, that it should attract readers' attention. Doesn't mean that it should be flowery words, but the content should be there, and it should be informative and concise. This is the second rule, and the third rule is that it should describe the essence of the work in few words. So these are the three quality criteria for a title. So one, it should attract readers' attention. Second, it should be informative and concise. And third, it should describe the essence of work in few words. Okay, and then let us examine a few titles. And if you look at some of the older papers, so older generation thesis, you will see some titles like this: studies on something, investigation of. This is a very old style. You come directly to what you wanted to say in a title. Abbreviation and jargons you should avoid. Okay, cute language is not necessary in a research or in a science article. Okay, I am giving you example of two titles here, and this is a bad title. For example, the title here is an investigation of hormone secretion and weight in rats. Okay, so this study, whether you just read it, whether you get any idea about what is the investigation. There are large number of hormones. What is a hormone? And the hormone and weight is related in rats. There are several species of rats. What is a rat? Nothing is mentioned. Okay. And also there is another title which the author tried to make it very cute. Fat rats, are their hormones different? So the work has nothing to do with that. Okay. Then what is the best title we can give? So here the author actually, when you read the paper, you understand that the author tried to explain the relationship of a hormone with the obesity. It is not actually fat or weight, it is obesity in a particular species of rat. Then how we can make a good title? So the relationship of luteinizing hormone to obesity in sugar rat. Better you give a scientific name so that the explanation will be complete here. So when you read the title, everything is clear. What is in the paper? The paper explains a relationship between a particular hormone. Hormone is mentioned here. And what is the relationship? This hormone is related with obesity, and where the experiment is done, in which animal the experiment is done, it is in a sugar cat. Okay, you can give a scientific name also, which along with the common name, so that the title will be the best title. Because when a reader goes through the title, he get every idea what is the content in that. Okay, so this is how a good title is designed, and you can work with a few titles and then ultimately decide what is that. The grammar should be correct, and the usages should be correct, and that is how a good title is prepared. Okay, so that means you have to follow all the three criteria. You should actually get the attention from the reader. It should be informative and concise, should describe the essence of the work in few words. So everything is there in this title. So this is how you have to go ahead. Okay. And there are very interesting type of, if you go through the literature, you will see quite a lot of interesting titles. Okay. And I'm not explaining everything because of the scarcity of time. And, but there are strange titles also when you look at the titles. Okay. And for example, you look at the titles here, for example, in the Dept, an in-depth analysis of a piece of shit. Okay, and that means that the author is examining human stool to find out a parasite. Okay, then this is a title which is accepted by INCLOS, and that means sometimes some curious titles may also come as a heading, but you don't have to actually always worry about this kind of very strange titles. It may not always work. Okay, so this is a title which we have given in a recent paper, and this says that Amazonian invaders in an Asian biodiversity hotspot, understanding demographics for management of the armored sailfin catfish. Okay, so we have given one thing, Amazonian invaders in an Asian biodiversity hotspot. So this is just to explain the place of origin of that species, and also the impact in a particular biodiversity hotspot. So there are you can frame the titles in different manner, but the content should be very clear from the title. Okay. Next comes the authors, authorship of the papers, and who will be the authors in a particular paper, and how to list author. And so some authors, the number of authors, it may vary from 1 to n number. There are some recent papers in science and some leading journals with even 100 plus authors. That's possible if it's a larger work and a collaborative work. Okay, and my simple definition to authorship is that who are all involved in a particular research, they are the authors. Who are all involved in a particular research and completing a research paper, and they are the authors. That means the author should have some kind of involvement in the paper, some kind of contribution to the paper. Okay, and the general trend in some of the laboratories which I have seen in India is that all the laboratory members, whether they have a contribution or not, they are put as authors. This is a very, very bad practice. For example, when you go to an interview board, and the interview board sees that your paper is there in all the different kinds of papers in different subjects, then that itself is a question for your credibility. That you have to remember. If you say that I have n number of papers and n in different fields in a shorter period of time, that's an indication that there is something fishy in that. Something smells bad. Okay, so normally the person, for a PhD student, normally if he does or she does maximum amount of work, he will be the first author. Okay, and the supervising teacher will be the next author. And if somebody helps in analysis and contributed to the work, and then they will be the author. If just by contributing a photograph or as doing a small analysis, you cannot actually claim the authorship, and then that is not ethical also. So that is the way in which authors are listed. All the authors who contribute to the work, they will become authors. First author, second author, again, between the laboratories and between the institutions, it may vary. But my perception is that whoever does the maximum amount of work, they will be the first author. In some cases, I will be the first author if I have initiated the work and I have written maximum amount in that paper. Sometimes I may claim the first authorship because my contribution is maximum in that paper. Okay, and normally if it is a PhD work, the PhD students' contribution will be more, and then naturally they will be the first author. Okay, and the first author is very important because when now many of the universities insist that a PhD student, once they submit a paper, and he or she should be the first author. And some of the universities now passed an order like that, that you have to keep in mind. That means if it's a PhD work, then you have to be the first author in at least one paper. Okay. So try to avoid gift authorship and ghost authorship. Unethical. Okay, you can give, but it is an unethical practice. Ghost authorship. That means not at all related with your work. Gift authorship. Then somebody helped you in something, and then you put them as an author. This is also not a good practice. Okay. Then keywords. Keywords, there are a lot of confusions for some beginners. They put every word in the title as a keyword. This is not the purpose of that. Keyword, so title, I told you, some of the key contents in the paper appear as a title. That means when you search, what is the purpose of keyword? When somebody search some subject area, your paper should come. Your paper should be listed in the search. Okay, that's the purpose. That means in a title, every word is automatically searched, and when somebody search using a keyword, that means you need not repeat the same words in the title as a keyword. And some key content in your paper which is not there in the title, if you can put them as a keyword, that's the best thing. That means that enhances the searchability of your paper. Okay, and that is the thing which you have to remember. And some of the journals, they have limitations in the number of keywords. That means you don't have to repeat the word title words in the keywords. So you can find out the alternative words which should be there in your in your paper. You cannot actually put a keyword which is not at all there in your or idea which is not at all there in your paper. So that is the thing which you have to remember. Keywords. Okay, what are the key? You should have an idea when you write a paper. What are the key words which are there, which are not there in the title as well? Sometimes in emergency, you can definitely include one or two words in the title, but I always recommend you that all the titles are already searchable. All the words in the title are searchable. Then why do you add that again in the keyword? Unnecessary. Okay. And so these are the things you have to remember. Then sometimes you can use a phrase also, but not a sentence. Okay, not an abbreviation. And you can use some, for example, if you are using marine fisheries as a keyword, no issue, because they are connected. And disconnected words you don't never use in a keyword, and not even more than two words together. And that also you have to avoid in a keyword. Okay. Okay. This is one example which is given there in keywords. For example, this is a title here, and these are the keywords. They have used all the possible keywords here, which are not there in the title. Some of the words they have used, but they have tried to avoid all the words which are used here. For example, genomic epidemiology of SARS-CoV-2 in a province in China. Okay, they have avoided all the keywords here. None of the words in title is actually put in the keyword here. For example, CoV-2 is here, but they used the word COVID because it's something connected with COVID. And then there's a word called SARS-CoV-2 that they have repeated here because that's a virus with which they work. So this is unavoidable. And then they have included other words which are there in the textbooks. Okay, like genomic epidemiology and phylogenetics, virus revolution, etc., etc. Okay. And then the abstract. I'll come to the abstract, and then what is there in the abstract? A summary of your entire thesis that must make a claim to new results. And these are the three questions inevitably you have to ask. Why you did the work? How you did the work? What was your main finding? What was your principal conclusions? If you answer these four major questions, that essentially will form the abstract of your work. Okay. And then this is so that means your abstract should answer these four questions. Okay, this is something you have to remember. So you summarize the problem, you summarize the methods, results, conclusions in a single paragraph, make it interesting and understandable, make it accurate and specific. A clear abstract will strongly influence whether or not your work is considered, and keep it as brief as possible. So if your abstract asks or answers these questions, and if you put all these answers in the abstract, and then that will make an abstract very accurate and very specific. Okay. And that means you have to be very clear with the abstract. And remember, you have to spend a lot of time in correcting and adjusting your abstract, because majority of the reviewers, including editors, they will first read the abstract and decide whether your paper should be accepted for initial review or not. So that is the thing which you have to remember. Okay, so the abstract is the most important element. You have to you have to write this with a lot of care and a lot of caution. Okay, and then when you write an abstract, and I will tell you that it should be written towards the end. Okay, abstract should be done towards the end. So this are also you have to remember, you have to do it towards the end. Okay, when you do a work, you do it towards the end, because only after completely writing the paper you can write an abstract. Okay, so the abstract is the most important thing. And then for a journal, you also remember what is the most important element there. Okay, what is the most important content there and most important thing there. Okay, and then additional tips: find out the maximum length in a single paragraph, and then extract key points from each session, and the condense you condense everything in each revision. And what to avoid: do not include references to figures, tables, and etc. in the abstract. You never include any reference, because that is not necessary at all in an abstract. And then do not include anything new which is not available in the results. These are the things which you have to avoid. Okay, you should never include any figures or any references, and then do not include anything new which is not available in the results. Okay, then how will you build an article? This is a very interesting the table usually provided by the Elsevier publisher. And then how will you arrange the things? Okay, this should go like this in a manner. For example, after analysis, you will get the figures and tables, and from that you just write the methods, then you interpret the results and write the discussion, and then come to the introduction. Okay, based on what is the result obtained, etc., and then write the conclusion. And finally, you write the title, abstract, and the keywords. So this is one suggestion, and I am not saying that you should follow the same method, but many people write the reverse. You first write the title, abstract, and keywords, and then come to these things. No, when in an usual cycle, this is the way you have to go, because after your research work, you will get a lot of figures and tables as after data analysis. Okay, with that you have to interpret the results and write the results, and based on and also the methods which ultimately led to the results, and then write the discussion. Okay, and when you write all the things, you will know what is there in your paper as the major findings, and then based on that you prepare an introduction, and then finally prepare a conclusion. And then after reading all the content, you decide upon the title, and when all the manuscript is ready, then you write the abstract, and then from the abstract and the content, the text, you find out the keyword. So this is how the workflow should be there for preparing a paper. Normally it is done the other way around, but this is always good, okay, for preparing a paper. Okay, then coming to the introduction part, what will you write in an introduction? Provide a brief context to the readers. That means the reader should understand by reading the first sentence what exactly you are aiming at in the paper. Then you address the issue. What is a problem? What is the hypothesis which you are actually trying to unravel in this paper? Then identify the solutions and limitations. If there are limitations in or research gaps in that area, you find out what exactly is there. Then identify what the work is trying to achieve, what you try to achieve through this paper, and then provide a perspective consistent with the nature of the journal. Okay, look at the journal and go through some of the recent good quality papers, and then look at the style in which the introduction is given. And with this, you prepare an introduction. Okay. And then what are the questions which you have to answer? Some of the questions you have to answer in the introduction. Okay. And then the first question is, what is the problem? Now, what is the problem under investigation? What is actually the research you are doing? And that question you have to answer. That means you have to describe the problem investigated, summarize the relevant literature research already done in the field. That means you have to update. Use only the best journal, the references appeared in the best journals, and not go for very, very primitive references, except in some taxonomic work. Otherwise, you have to always use the papers. I always request you to cite the papers which is published in good quality journals, not from predatory journals. You try to avoid right from the beginning. If you try to avoid the predatory journals and the paper published in the predatory journals, you can definitely enhance the quality also. Okay. And then why the work is important? That is the next question. Why your work is important in the context of the other work done? So this is the second question you have to answer. Why this is important? Why this paper is important? And then what solution you offer? What is the solution you offer through your research work? Okay. And then you there are some tips for that, writing the introduction. Once you answer these questions, you move from general to specific. Okay, so you work, you start from a general statement and then come specifically to the field. This is one way of doing it. Okay, and be selective, not exhaustive, because many of the good quality journals never encourage a very, very long introduction. It may be few paragraphs only. Okay, so you have to choose the best studies or the classic works in your field and cite them. So this is the way you have to progress in this or with this. Okay, so there is again a tendency that if an author publishes in the same field, you copy the introduction from the earlier paper. You argue that this is from your earlier paper, but that is plagiarism. If you reuse the introduction from your own paper, that is a plagiarism. That means every paper should have an independent view of providing the result, and that is the reason why even if you argue that you have taken the introduction or used the sentences, the introduction from your own paper, that is an attempt of plagiarism. So every paper should be fresh. That means every paper you have to write fresh with a new mindset and a new idea. Okay, that's the thing, based on the result that you have. That is the reason why I said you have to write the results first and then come to the introduction. Okay. And in the case of thesis, it may be different slightly. I'm not going the details. In the case of a thesis, you may have a general introduction which give you a general overview about the subject in your thesis, and then you can divide each and every topic based on the result as separate chapters. Okay, so each chapter, that means each chapter should be independent. That means it should have an IMRAD format. There should be introduction, materials and method, result and discussion, and conclusion. That means each chapter should be independent. Okay, that means each chapter can form a separate paper later on, or a manuscript later on. Okay, but only thing is that only difference is that you can put all the references together in order to avoid duplications. So this is the only thing you have to remember, which makes the paper different from a thesis when you write it. Okay. And the review of literature, this is an old style. If you review writing a separate review of literature in a paper or in a thesis, it's an old style, because the introduction itself answer all these questions. Because in review, you are trying to review what are the earlier work done, and then what is actually the research gaps. That already you have already written in the introduction. So a separate review of literature is not at all needed, and that is not the modern style. Okay. And you can use some other methods like when you write an introduction or a review, there is something called citation analysis. I am not going into the details. Citation analysis is actually a modern tool based on the informatics, which provide you with all the literature published in the online platform using in a particular subject. So it will give you what is an idea, what if it's a new branch of science. So what is the first paper published, and then based on that citations and what are the subsequent papers, and then what are the subject areas emerged from that, and that kind of an overview you will get when you do a citation analysis. That can also form part of an introduction, and sometimes citation analysis can itself form a paper, a review paper. Okay, so I'm not going into the details. This is a modern trend, then you can all sometimes try. Okay, and then some of the important points which I have to mention here is that, the introduction should always cite the key or landmark studies. So if you are working in a particular area, there are some classical works, there are some landmark studies, and these landmark studies will be there in almost all the good quality papers published in your field of research. So don't avoid that, because they are the most key or the pioneering studies, or sometimes some of the key studies that you have to put in the introduction. And always you have to highlight the gap knowledge area in this field in the introductory part. So these are the things which you have to remember, and then always highlight deficiencies if any, and always do a critical analysis of the research. And if all the things are there, it will become a fantastic introduction. Okay, then come to the next part, the methods. And sometimes some of the journals say it as materials and method. Some materials are involved. Method is basically the way you do the work. So what you have to do, describe how the problem was studied, include detailed information. If it is actually a taxonomy work, you just give the locality, specialities of the location, including a map, including if it is an ecology work. And if it is actually a biology work, you tell about the species and its details, including the geographical coordinates, etc., etc. And then describe the previous, what method, what procedure you have used in doing this work, and then what are the equipments you used. And majority of the good quality journal insists that what is actually the equipment, what is the make, what is the country of origin of that equipment, etc. So you make, for example, if you say that you have analyzed this sample from a compound microscope, or you have used a scanning electron microscope, then you have to say what is the company, whether it is, what is the company, what is the make, and what is the place of origin. If it is from Japan, you have to say this is the Olympus, this version of the microscope from Japan. And that is the thing which you have to write here. Okay. And suppose you are doing biology research and you are using an experiment in animal, then definitely you have to give what is an animal and where it is, what is the source, where it came from, and then whether all the animal research now need, all the journals insist that you should actually quote the approval number of the ethics committee. Okay. So that means in the method section itself, you have to explain what is what was the process of getting the approval of the ethics committee. And normally the approvals are given with a number. You have to actually give the number here. Normally all the international journals insist on the ethics committee, including for fish. In the case of fish, India has no such rules, regulations as of now, but still you have to give an explanation when our editor asks that this animal is not in the endangered list, and it is actually, there is no regulation as far as India is concerned to use this animal and standards, etc. But for all the other things, animals, there is an ethical committee approval requirement, and then that you have to mention here. So that's about the methods. Okay. Then guidelines for effective research, methods section. How did you study the problem? And how did you use a particular instrument? And all these questions you have to answer. And then then additional tips are that then you have, when somebody goes through your material section, and they should be in a position to replicate the same work. That means you should provide sufficient details. And only thing to remember, the youngsters or the beginners, You should not write a detailed procedure. If, for example, if you are analyzing protein, you can say that the protein is analyzed by this and this method. Okay, using this apparatus. Just give the reference there because it's already known. For example, if you are doing the DNA barcode analysis, you just say that I use this kind of a kit and followed the instructions given by this method. Just give a reference. That's all. Okay. And then you put the things in a chronological order. If there are different sets of experiment, you divide it into subheadings. Okay, and make it in an order. And then the methodology should actually have the same kind of flow in the results also. Then remember here, this is a section where you use the past tense because this is the work which you have already done, the experiment you have done. So this part you have to use the past tense. Okay. And measurements always use standardized measurements, qualities, concentrations, measurements, etc. And in many of the journals insist on metric qualities and time. I mean, some of the journals insist on 24-hour time period and the temperature and all the degrees and units. You have to use it there precisely. And then you have to avoid detailed common procedure and don't never ever mix the result with the procedure, because this method section only you have to explain the method you used to do the work or do the analysis. Now coming to the results. Result actually is the most important part of a research paper, and where you have to actually explain what result you obtained and what was your research finding. Okay, and then based on the analysis, you separate the result into different categories and put different subheadings and explain one by one. And there should be a logical sequence. So you, in your paper, you know what you wanted to write, and you have different results obtained, but categorize them and put them in a logical sequence, and start from the the general to precise results, and each and every paragraph you can explain each set of results, and results should be supplemented with the figures and tables. And when you use figures and tables, don't use both the things together. And if you can explain something with the table, use only table. And if you can explain something with the figure, only figure. But don't use tables and figures to explain a fact, because journals will not have sufficient space to put both the tables and figures. Whenever you use table and figure, use it with the clarity and check whether the journals will accept the color photographs and color figures. Some of the journals you have to pay for color printing. And if that is there, then you always make it a point that you are preparing a black and white graph. Okay, though it all depends upon the the journal and journal specifications. Okay, and you always feature the unexpected findings also in your result, and then provide statistical analysis to interpret your result, and include illustrations and figure high quality illustrations. And when you do an illustration or photograph, you just check the other guidelines, and every journal may have set up the guidelines for preparing the color photographs and figures. You follow that. For example, as far as I know, many of the journals insist that the photograph must be of 300 dpi or 600 dpi resolution. So you have to make that accordingly and prepare that accordingly. Okay. And then how will you write? These are the questions you have to answer in the results. What did you observe? What was your observation? And each observation you separate as small headings and then write. Okay. And then you don't have to repeat the procedure here, and just write the main findings supported by tables and figures. Every result should be supported by tables and figures. For example, if you are doing a microplastic content, then definitely it should be supported by the graph you obtain from the result of an FTA thing, or Raman, or even the scanning electron microscope supporting evidence. So these are the supporting evidences you have to provide. Okay. And then you have to put, when you are using a graph, remember that it should be clear. Don't put everything in a figure, as simple as possible, but you have to label x-axis as well as y-axis. And every bar, if it's a bar diagram, everything should have an explanation and the content and description within the graph. Never put the title inside the figure. Okay, that you may practice in your thesis, but not in a paper, because in a paper, your legend or title for the figure you have to give separate in majority of the journals. So remember, when you are preparing a graph in an Excel sheet, never opt for a title within the graph. That is not a good practice, because title should be given separately in the results. So that's the thing you have to remember. Okay, and when you describe certain things or result, definitely past tense is required, past tense is required, and describe, especially when you describe what happened. Okay, and subheadings, use subheadings and headings, and use tables and figures, everything. Okay, and then what to avoid? Don't simply repeat the table and figure data. Okay, and then don't interpret the results, because result session is only to highlight what you observed. What was your result? You just say. The reasons for that, interpretation for that, all should come in the discussion part. Okay, and then avoid extra words, which is not preferred by high quality journals. For example, it is shown in table 1 that X induced Y. It is not required. Just write simply X induced Y. Within bracket, you write table 1 or figure 1. So that is the style you have to adopt. This kind of an illustrated extra words you have to avoid. Use simple sentences, and then explain, put the table and figure inside the brackets. And everywhere it should be continuous also. For example, table number should be continuous, and whenever you mention a table in the text, it should be mentioned, there should be a table. When you mention a figure, there should be a figure correspondingly. These are the things the beginners should actually understand. Now, next part is discussion. Discussion, how will you write a discussion? My simple advice for the beginners is that you have a set of results. For example, I'll tell, for example, 5 set of results you have. Okay, and 5 set of results convey certain ideas, some observations. Then you just ask some of the questions. Why these results came? What is the importance of the results? And what are the similar works done? And how your result vary from the other works? And what is novel in your result? These things, step by step, result by result, or heading by heading, you explain in the discussion. That means interpretation of the result. You interpret the result. Most important, this is the most important section. You have to actually discuss with the published work. Make the discussion correspond to the result and complement them. Then compare published results with your own work, and highlight the salient features of your work, how your work differ from the other works, and then use the best reference in the field and avoid predatory journals. So if you follow these guidelines, you can prepare a very good results. For example, I am asking some questions, and these questions should be answered in the discussion part. Then what do your observations mean? For example, you got a results. What does it mean? Okay, that you have to explain, and how this result is comparable with others. Okay, and then you have to actually make a comparison. How your result is different from other work, that you have to explain. And what is a salient feature which you can actually highlight? What is actually the knowledge which you newly created through your work? That you can explain in the discussion part. Okay, and then what is the conclusion from the results? Each of the result you can have a conclusion. Okay, so the pattern, principles, relationship, everything you can explain here in this part. Okay, and then if you have a contradiction, for example, if your result is contradictory with some other work, you should be honest enough to state why this is different from other work. And that is why the honesty in this work, because sometimes the reviewer will catch hold of that. If you are actually doing something wrong, your result explains something wrong with the other work, and then you are avoiding that discussion in the discussion part. That will be the point where the reviewer will catch you. Okay, so if your result is different from the other work, you have to actually explain that, and you have to find out the reason for that, and then you have to explain that. Don't actually shy that sometimes if I say that your paper will be rejected. No, if you are explaining that with a reason, that's the best thing to do. Okay, these are the things which you have to understand. Okay, then you have to ask how, in a broader sense, what is actually there in the result, and then you have to actually suggest and explain the reasons for that, and what is you have to avoid in the discussion. Do not overgeneralize. If your result is explaining only certain facts, you just cannot go for a generalization. For example, if you are doing a water quality analysis, for example, and your result tells you that the water quality parameters are optimum. It is not optimum, and it is not beyond the approved limit. Then if you say that your system is polluted, that is the thing which I often see in my journal. When a paper is submitted on pollution, even if the water quality parameters are normal, general trend is that you say that it is polluted. But your result did not support that, because there is a feeling among the researchers that if you do an ecology work, and if you say that the system is polluted, then only you can say that the result is good. It is not like that. You are doing the research, and you have the result with you. You are confident with the result. Then you have to explain why it is happened. And if the system is in healthy status, you explain that this is in a healthy status. You give the reasons for that. Okay, and then no, you don't speculate. You need not actually speculate. You don't know anything, then you don't never speculate, because in science there is no role of speculation. Okay, and then if you have new findings, then you explain that. Don't ignore deviations on your data. If you have some deviation in the result, you explain that. You always avoid the speculations. Finally, you come to the conclusion. Okay, conclusion is a few line statements which summarize your result and discussion. Okay, that means what is the finding of your result, and what is the most important findings in your result, and then provide a justification of your research. And never, I have seen several papers where they have introduced a new material, because they may have something in the result, but you will give a broad conclusion. For example, if you are working on a water body in somewhere in a particular district in Kerala, and if you say that all the water bodies in Kerala is polluted, then you cannot make a statement like that. Then if you are doing an analysis and say that globally this is a major issue, no, your work is limited with the system. That means you are supposed to give a conclusion only based on that system. Never ever generalize. This is a bad tendency which I've seen in many of the new beginners in this field. Never ever give a generalization. If you are for example, if you're working with the chemistry, you found out a new molecule, and then say that the new molecule solve all the issues, all the problems. Never do that, because you are not supposed to there. You have to give an explanation or conclusion only based on the result which you have actually got. Okay, and also you can provide a critical assessment. For example, many of the research will not give you a final answer, and the answer is not there. Then you provide a recommendation. There is a limitation in the study, and more studies are needed in this particular field, and that is the recommendation. That recommendation can also part of the conclusion. Okay, that means you have to suggest further studies and questions, so that somebody reading your paper can further that research and carry that research forward based on your paper. And that is how all the good papers perform. And then finally, after the conclusion, you can write the acknowledgements. And who will you acknowledge? If the advisor is not your advisor is not an author of your paper, which seldom happen, then you can always, if you are multiple advisors and one advisor is not in your paper, you can always acknowledge him. And inevitably, all the research scholars make it a habit that if you have funding from some sources, even from your university where you are working, you have to acknowledge that, because funding is one of the most important part of your research. If you are working as a part of a research project, you have to acknowledge. And many of the research journals always ask for a number also, reference number also. You provide that number. That is also important, because that's actually something which can connect with the funding and then your work. And then if you have if you're working with animals, and if your animal is provided by some laboratory or the bacteria, working with bacteria, it is the colony is provided by some lab, then you can always acknowledge them. If somebody help you in doing the collection and analysis, that also you can do. And sometimes some of the reviewers are not anonymous, they reveal the name. Then you can also acknowledge them, because some of the reviewers will help you a lot in improving the quality. And if you know the reviewer, definitely you can write them. And then if your reviewer's contribution is much better in your paper to improve and get it accepted, then even if you don't know the reviewer, you can thank them. I thank the reviewers for their help in or contribution in improving the quality of the work. That you can always. So whoever helped you in the work, you can acknowledge them. But it should not be a large paragraph. In a research paper, it should be few sentences alone. And I'm seeing that you many of the researchers thank God Almighty in your thesis, but it should not happen actually in a research paper, because it's actually you who did the work. Okay. And finally, the references. Okay. And this is a part where I see a lot of issues, especially with the students who start writing the research papers and the thesis. And one thing to remember is that when you cite a reference in the right from the introduction, materials and method, there is one area where you will not have any references. That is the result part. Result is actually your own contribution, where there normally there will not be any references, and in abstract also. In all the other parts, you will have references. So right from the first reference you have in the introduction to the last in the discussion, you have to you list them and put all the entire references. Now, the software is available like EndNote, which automatically put the references towards the end. That also you can practice. But for a beginner, you always check all the references. That means in the reference section, all the references cited should be there. There should not be any extra. That means you have to take a printout, check all the references are cited, or you have some extra references which is not mentioned in the text. So this inevitably you have to do, because if your reference is messed up, and many of the journals even reject the paper because you don't know the ABCD of writing a reference. So reference is also very important when you write a paper. Okay. Then I explain you two styles of writing the references. And remember that each of the journal will have their own style of references. But for a PhD student, you follow whatever is practiced in your university, the style. But for a research paper, each journal may have their own style. But generally, there are two ways of putting the references in a journal, and one is the Harvard reference style. Harvard reference style is that which follow the alphabetical listing of references. That means whatever references you cited in the paper, everything comes in an alphabetical order. Okay, and this is a style. In some journals, in the alphabetical order, there will be the author name. Remember, the author name should not be multiple. It should be a single name. And if it's that means it's only the last name. Normally, following the foreign or the British system, you take the last name and then put the other names as initials. Okay, here this is Adams AB, and then the article title, and then the journal title, volume, and then some journals insist on the number also, which is not followed in many of the journals now, and then the page number. Okay, this is the general style. And modern style is that many of the journals demand the DOI number also, because DOI search thing is actually a tag for searching your paper. It's an electronic search mechanism. So DOI is also required in some of the research sightings. So you also make it a habit that to keep the DOI, because it's very easy. From here itself, you can go to the paper from the Word file itself. Okay. And then here there's another thing. So if it's a book, same thing, book title, publisher, and the place of publication. And place of publication, remember, sometimes, for example, if it is Wiley, it is published from many places. You just take the first name. It may be published from New York, London, everything, but you just take the first place. Okay. And then write. Some journals even need the number of pages of this book. If it is the format, then you put the number of pages also. Here there is another difference. You have, if the same author has in your paper cite two authors, same author published a paper in the same year. For example, here Adams published in 1983. You quoted two paper. Then you put one as A and other as B. And I have seen many papers where the unnecessarily A and B are cited. It has a meaning. That will happen only when the same author paper is mentioned in the same year in a particular journal. Okay, then you have to put A and B. A, the first mentioned reference, you can put as A, and the second one as B. Or if it is in the same journal, then you can put the initial pages as A and B. But what I will recommend is that in the text, the first reference you take, or you take it, put it as A, and the second subsequent one you put as B. So that is why A and B are used in the references. And if it is multiple author, you can see that some of the journals, after 3 names, they demand et al. And some of the journals, you have to write all the names. So this is very, very important. Okay. So all these things are important when you write these contents. So this is the way hardware style in the alphabetical order. And more than then Vancouver style is followed by some journals. For example, in India, Current Science follow the Vancouver style, where the research when you put the first reference, you have to put it as number 1, and this number is followed here. No alphabetical order. That means that there will not be any alphabetical order. When you mention the first reference, you have to write a superscript number 1, and second reference you have to put number 2, and then same order you have to follow in the references. This is called Vancouver style. But this is rather difficult, especially when you remove one, when you edit the article, and when you remove the one reference from the text, then everything you have to rewrite. So that's the reason why many of the journals will not follow this kind of a style, but still it is followed by some of the journals, including the Current Science published from India. They follow the Vancouver style. Okay, that means if you repeat the same, for example, Adams is repeated in introduction and discussion. But again, when you use the next time, you have to use number 1. Okay, so this kind of a numbering system is called the Vancouver reference style. Okay, then how will you cite the references in the textbook? And I have seen many of the youngsters, so when they start writing the paper, they put the initials also. No, never put the initials. You can cite the references in text in many ways. For example, this is one style. And for example, you give the author name, last name, and then the year. And here the next one. Put all the things in chronological order. Okay, and this is one way. You make a statement and I give an idea and then give the references for that. And also you can write Click and Clark demonstrated that. That means you can use the author name first and then put the idea. So these are the 2 ways in which you can put. If you don't know the author, if a paper, a manuscript or a report and never mention any specific author, then you can always put anonymous. Okay, and if there is more than 2 authors, you always put et al. When you use the term et al, you make it a point that et al is actually not an English word, and then it is a full word. Alum is actually shortened of al is actually a shortened of alum, so there should be a full stop always. That means it's an indication that it is not a full word. That means when you use a word et al should be followed by a full stop. Okay, because it's not, if it is if something continues, then you can put a comma. This is something which you have to remember. So this is the way in which the references are cited in the text. Okay, and when you finally arrange the things, this is the way you have to arrange. Put the things in an alphabetical order. If the same author has paper in the same year, then you put A and B. Then if a same author has several papers, including 2 author paper, 3 author paper, then the question is, how will you arrange? Very simple. Don't worry about anything. First, single author papers you list based on chronology. Then forget about 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Then take the second author and then their alphabet. Then arrange the remaining things. Don't look at the year. Just take the second author and then put them in the in a chronology in the alphabetical order. Okay, you can see it here. Single author first, and then you go by the second author name and look at the initial letter and go in the alphabetical order. Okay, so this is how majority of the journals list the papers in the reference session. So you can cite directly or indirectly. So I'm not going into the details, but for proper citations, you always follow the journal style, because some of the journals will not prefer for comma, full stop, etc. And they even don't use and before the last author. And here some of the journals put it in brackets, some in without bracket. So that means you have to follow the style of the journal when you look at the paper. Okay, so you just follow the style in each case. Now, this is another problem which I have seen when the people list references. Okay, for example, some of the journals, when you copy from the journal, some of the journals demand full names, expanded name in the author title. But I have seen this even among the senior researchers. They just copy the journal, what is seen in the journal, and use it as such in the journal. But my recommendation here is that you never use this kind of a referencing pattern. What is, there should be a standard for referencing. You have to maintain that standard. What is the standard? You always have to use the last name. That means even if the journal says that it is Thompson A. Jefferson and Samuel K. Hung, your writing style should always be Jefferson and Hung, because you take the last name and put the other things as initials. It should be not AJ, but it is TA. Okay, TA. And then Hung, it should be S first and then Kela second. So this is the way you have to actually write the references. Okay. I think I have a power failure here. Sometimes I may go offline, and then you have to excuse me. I'll come back quickly if the power goes off. Okay, so if you have a full name like this, then always take the last name and make a reference like this. Okay, when you quote in the text, never use the initials. So these are the things you have to remember. Okay, and okay. 1 minute. Geo. Right. Perfect. Okay. Let us continue. And this is in the way in which you have to put the author name. Okay. And this I already, there are some reference management tools like the EndNote, which you can, when you advance with writing the paper, you can follow that. Like EndNote Basic is there, which automatically, when you put a reference in the text, that will automatically come. But only thing is that only the references which is already there in the website or in the www or in the open access regime will actually come in that. If you are using a textbook or an older reference, it will not come. Okay, but if you are working with a new subject, it's always possible that you can use a EndNote. But only thing is that also you can use the old references, but you can edit and then put the references back. Then Zotero is another software which again provide you with automatic referencing mechanism, and this is the second thing. Okay, Zotero. So Zotero and EndNote, when you go to the advanced level, you can always use. Okay, and then another reference manager is the Mendeley. Mendeley also you can use when you when you become a very frequent writer. Okay, and then tables and figure. Tables and figure, you make it a point that you do you give only the details. For example, if you have a monthly data for 1 year, never try to put everything together. You just give the highlight and put an average. So it should be very neat. And figure also, every figure title should be, for example, a figure X, figure describing this. Never write like that. Every table title, every figure title should be independent. That means if you separate full title, you have to write in the figure as well as for table. These are the things which you have to remember, and never put so many data. And if you have a statistical analysis, always put the statistical results also into the figure, merge that into the figure. So this is what you have to do. Okay. Now, I have explained to you, this is only an introductory class, which where I wanted to give you a broader idea how to start writing and how to follow the scientific procedure for writing a paper. And many of the students never attempt to write because of fear. This you can avoid only by writing. You write, rewrite, and rewrite. Write, and write. This is the only way to improve it. Okay, write, edit, write. So this is the only way. You check your grammar and then start writing, and then you can become. There's no shortcut for that. Only by writing you can become a good writer. Okay, and then it is and also remember, writing is all about rewriting. That means you cannot write all of a sudden a full paper continuously. Especially when you are a beginner, you have to write, you have to rewrite. That means you write, then what you have to do? Then edit it, rewrite it, and show it to some elders, including your supervising teachers, senior researchers, get it corrected, and then again you rewrite. So it's writing is always rewriting. Sometimes you submit sometimes 3 or 4 times you have to write and rewrite and edit before you finally key in or finally you submit. Okay. And finally, you become confident, when you edit and continuously and check all the errors and run it through the grammatical correction system in the Word or in Grammarly, and then ultimately you become confident that the paper is ready to submit. And then you do that. Then immediately after writing, this is again an advice for the youngsters or the beginners. When you write down the thesis and paper, and believe that you have finished it, immediately never submit. You write down the paper, complete it, then forget about the paper for 1 or 2 days. Then with a fresh mind, come back early in the morning and start reading the paper. You will still find mistakes. So this is an advice, immediately after writing and finishing the paper, never submit. You give some relaxation time for the paper and relaxation time for you. Okay. And then you read, then in a good mood, you start reading it again. Then you still find mistakes. And then you still find improvements in many of the structure and the style. And then that is a way in which you can improve. And finally, if you become very confident, then go ahead and submit. Okay. And then scientists are rated, by what they finish, not by what they attempt. So you can attempt many things, but ultimately, you are rated based on what you write and what you finish in through the writing. Okay. Then what makes a good research paper? Good science, good writing, publication in good journals. These are the three quality standards you always keep in mind: good science, good writing, publication in good journals. Okay. And then, when you select a paper, what are the key factors for selection? Priorities, and one, impact factor, reputation of the journal, access to the audience, overall editorial standard, publication speed. If you want to publish, for example, you have 2 months to submit the thesis, and then you have no paper, then you worry that where to publish. And I have seen, every month I receive so many requests like that. But we have no other choice. Many average you need 5 or 6 months in many cases. Even if it is a rapid publication system in a good journal, it will take few months, minimum 3 months. That means that much time is required if it is a good quality paper. So if you really want, if your submission time for a thesis is next year, then you should have to start preparing from this year itself. Don't wait for the last time, because last minute, then you have to do a lot of compromises. That's the reason why many of these students ultimately end up with some predatory journals. Okay, so this quality standard you have to actually think about. And some journals are open access, some are not. And some of the open access journals, you can also still publish free. But only thing is, if you wanted to make open access, read everyone free, then you have to pay money. You can opt out. And then you can publish it free. Okay. And then, this is the thing which you have to remember. And rules of the road is be brief. Okay. Whatever you write, you should be very brief, because you have to hit the points and write only the things which are required for the paper, not unnecessary writing. General writing, a history writing, it is not required for a paper. That is another thing which you have to remember. And I always, as a biologist, I always quote this paper. And this is a Nobel Prize winning discovery, elucidating the structure of DNA. A paper published by Watson and Crick in the journal Nature in 1953 for explaining the structure of DNA. This paper is 1.5 pages, published as a letter in Nature. That means even a Nobel Prize winning discovery may be as short as this. That means writing too much is not important, but precisely writing what is important is very much essential, especially when you start as a beginner. Okay. And there are plagiarism detection software, including, for example, the UGC insists on Urkund. I am sure that that's not the best, but this is an option for you. And there are good software like Turnitin. That's the best in the world. Turnitin or Authenticate. Okay, that's now it's called Authenticate. And then some free software is also available. You once you finish it, you just run it through the software and find out. For example, if some most of the journals always run your paper through the plagiarism software, and the plagiarism is detected, then immediately the paper will be rejected. So make sure that after completing the paper, you run it through a plagiarism software, And suppose unknowingly or knowingly something happened in between, you have to actually change that, because most of the thing happens when you copy down or use the same sentences. Some of the journals even insist that 3 words should not be, continuous with that of another journal. Okay, so that means you have to be that much cautious when you write something in the introduction. And there are different resources available online, especially to improve writing. And I always recommend you that you just go through some of these classical textbooks which explain how to write a paper, how to write a thesis. And there are some classical textbooks which some of them I have already shown, and many of them are available in the libraries across the world, across India. And then you just read some of these textbooks and get familiarized, because 2 hours time I cannot explain. No one in the world can explain how to write a paper in a precise manner. But only thing is, I have only given you a broader idea how to write, how to attempt, and what are the quality standards you have to maintain. And once you start doing it, definitely the things will be better. So always read some manuals or textbooks which explain how to write a paper and how to write better English. Okay, how to use better English in your research paper, especially in science. So these things are required before you attempt a paper. Okay, so let us wait. Let us publish or perish, and keep your trial on to publish the best journal in the world.